Shalom. First and foremost, I want to begin by giving all honor, all praise, and all glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahushai, Bahashim, Rechakwadash. Double honors to the elder apostles and bishops of the great millstone that rule well. And as always, peace, blessings, and salutations unto the tabernacle of David, the hopeful elect, scattered abroad across the four winds of the earth. Yeah, the time is ticking, brothers, and you few sisters out there. You know, they're going to be aiming at, those who speak the truth. Those who are upright. That stand up for the Lord against the workers of iniquity. They just had this international policy summit, and you're going to hear this guy, okay? You're going to hear him, pretty much gaslight, people that actually point out certain things that the powers that be, the group of people behind the power and the control of this current world order, they're going to make it basically illegal for you to point out the obvious. And they've been setting parameters for this, with all these different anti-sin bills. They're monitoring, every platform of social media. It's all type of surveillance algorithm, technology built into all these platforms, built into all these smart devices, just so that they can, listen and monitor and track, everything that you do and say. All right. And they're going to start cracking down. All right. So those of you that are, still new and you're listening and learning, and we ain't got much time left. All right. So I want to play some of this video, just so you can hear, the hypocrisy, the denial, the gaslighting. And this is what they do. They professionally do it. Play victim while being the villain the whole entire time. So let's get into it. Speaking this truth, how certain bugs, they don't like lavender, eucalyptus smell, how vampires, they can't be in the sun, or they can't be in contact with garlic. Well, when you throw out facts and truth about them to these people, they have the same reaction. They just cannot. The truth, it's just such a deadly threat to them that if you speak it, now we have to threaten you. We have to penalize you. We got to counsel you somehow. But let's get into it. And this is 13 minutes, 26 seconds long. I'm not going to react to the whole video, but, just peep to some of the things that he's saying here.
I'm coming here from the United Nations Human Rights Council in Geneva. When I walk in the room, I get an altogether very different kind of reception. So I'm glad to make the adjustment. Friends, I was supposed to be here on stage today with Ambassador Dani Danon, Israel's permanent representative to the United Nations, but he was unable to attend because he had to participate in an important meeting at the United Nations. You may have seen the video Clash. It was a meeting on sexual violence in conflict, and Ambassador Danon was calling out the latest disgraceful report by the UN Secretary General, where he placed Israel on the same blacklist with the Hamas terrorist organization. falsely accusing Israel of systematic sexual violence through the IDF. And
you saw that little awkward pause while he's making this statement, because he know full freaking well. They know full well what they do, but they have to get up there and they have to play victim, right? Like, is that not true? Is there not evidence of those type of things occurring? And then they had the nerve to have a freaking protest. A freaking protest defending their actions. Now, let me do this. And they might actually strike this video down for this, but hey, the truth got to come out either way. All right? You might not be able to see this on YouTube, but you could definitely see it on other platforms. All right? Now this is an example right here. So he's set up there. Let me run this back.
And Ambassador Ganon was calling out the latest disgraceful report by the UN Secretary General, where he placed Israel on the same blacklist with the Hamas terrorist organization, falsely accusing Israel of systematic sexual violence through the IDF.
And then he said that with an awkward pause. Come on, man. Y'all get yourselves away. Look at this. And this footage is exactly what you're seeing. What's being done, what you think is being done is exactly what is being done. Come on, man. But this is what they do. All right. But like the scriptures say, if not where and who is he? You know, you're telling me these are the people, right? So you can't tell the truth. All right. So this is what they up here doing, because they have to basically regulate. Too many people all over the world are catching on to these people, and they're speaking out. All right, like the prophecy says in Obadiah, I will make thee small among the heathen, thou art greatly despised. You know, and you get caught red-handed every time. So now you have to basically bully and force a muzzle on the world to stop pointing out your iniquities, your atrocities. All right, your evil doings. And those that speak up, you know, they're speaking up rightly. So now you're basically setting up that sword against people that are speaking up rightly now. That's what they're planning to do. All right, let me get a quick script. Let's go to Psalm 34. Actually, I think it might be Psalm 37. Yeah, here it is. Psalm 37 and 14. It says, the wicked have drawn out the sword and have bent their bow to cast down the poor and needy and to slay such as be of upright conversation. And don't that sound like Cain? You know, Cain, he didn't like that Abel, he did the upright thing, with his sacrifice, and his was more respected than his own. So he got mad because he did the right thing and he didn't do it. So he went and slayed his brother. So you speak uprightly, doing the right thing, obviously it's going to make you a target, So this is what we're up against. But let's continue to hear this devil out.
And when he spoke, he was suddenly interrupted by one of the UN Secretary General's representatives, a woman named Vanessa Frazier, who used to be the ambassador of Malta and is now the special representative on children in armed conflict. And she interrupted him, and they had this clash. And this went viral on the internet. And one of the debates was who was in the right when he was interrupted. And there was a website called Security Council Procedure, and they said that this lady had the right to interrupt the ambassador. And of course, that was false. A UN staffer has no right to interrupt a member state. And I responded on Twitter to this account, Security Council Procedure, supposed to be the experts. And I said, I can tell you from personal experience, I've been condemned personally for many times, hundreds of times, and I don't have the right to intervene. Only a member state can interrupt on a point of order. And then this account suddenly deleted all of their tweets on this issue. Why do I mention this? Because it's indicative that the Secretary General Guterres representative is breaking clear procedure to interrupt the state of Israel, something they would never do to any other state. They would never interrupt China, Qatar, Russia, Pakistan, Venezuela. They don't do it. And yet when it comes to Israel, they interrupt. And Guterres is the one, infamously, who just 2 weeks after October 7th came before the United Nations and he said, yes, I condemn the attacks of October 7th. But, he said, it's also important to note that the attacks of Hamas did not happen in a vacuum. Did not happen in a vacuum. And in saying that, he went on to enumerate numerous alleged Palestinian grievances against Israel. Effectively, Antonio Guterres was justifying the attacks of October 7th. And not everything that Guterres said was wrong. When he said the attacks did not happen in a vacuum, ladies and gentlemen, nothing any of us did today happened in a vacuum. Everything is influenced by our surroundings, by our culture, by those who are around us. But if Mr. Guterres had just a smidgen of self-reflection, he might have asked, who was the educator of the Hamas terrorists who invaded Israel on October 7th and committed atrocities?
Come on, man. They do all this finger pointing, no accountability, just blame shifting, deflection. When you try to hold them accountable for what they do, they can't own up. They cannot take accountability. There's always blaming. There's always gaslighting. There's always deflecting. And then the fact that you hold them accountable or even raise question about what they're doing, somehow, some way, you're in the wrong. And you got to face some type of punishment. But they're not in power though. They don't have no kind of control, no nothing. And they wonder why they're being despised among the nations right now. That when the scriptures say, if you let me do this. Job 9 and 20. Like in their eyes, they can't do no wrong at all. Everybody else do, but they can't. But hey, it's beautiful though, because the Lord, He created the perfect devil, man. He created the perfect vessel of wrath fit to destruction, for sure. Job 9:20, it says, if I justify myself, thine own mouth shall condemn me. If I say I am perfect, it shall also prove me perverse. Though I were perfect, yet would I not know my soul, I would despise my life. You know, and that's what they do. They justify themselves. But everybody can see right through their BS. And let's not act like all these terror organizations wasn't set up and funded. Let's not act like you're not incapable of doing terroristic acts or carrying out terroristic operations. What do you call attacking civilian infrastructures or attacking places where there's innocent civilians that have nothing to do with your war? What do you call that? You know? But they'll justify that. You know? BB, he'll justify using scripture. You know, remember Amalek. They read the scriptures concerning Amalek. So they'll throw that Amalek identity on you just to justify them genociding you. You know? It went from Hamas being Amalek to the Iranians being Amalek. You know? And you even had a rabbi say that the Edomite Christian is Amalek. So, hey, and then look at how they treat the Christians over there. Lebanon is a good portion of them are Christian. You see? And they done slaughtered plenty of them. So, and then the Christians over here, they're being groomed and indoctrinated to basically defend what that regime is actually doing, to basically support them. So they're going to be these church pastors, they're going to be teaching the people to support them. You know, the murders, the genocide, the expansion project, the greater project that they're operating, which is basically going to use all your taxpaying money. He's going to leave you dry. Your president is going to continue to aid them and send weapons over there. You keep these wars going. And they don't follow none of the commandments. That's why it says in Psalms 50:16, what hast thou to do to declare my statutes, that thou should take my covenant in thy mouth, seeing thou hatest instruction and cast of my words behind thee. You know, what does the scripture say about removing landmarks, boundary lines? You know, they don't listen to, they don't follow anything written in this book. But these are the chosen. They're perfect. You know, they're the most attacked. You know, it's like if everybody else is seeing a problem and pointing it out and don't want nothing to do with you, and you're the only one on earth that's saying, I'm innocent, I ain't doing nothing to nobody. What does that really say about who the common denominator is? But that just speaks to their character, man. The soul that is lifted up is not upright in them. Let me get this in Psalm 36. And this scripture really describes their nature to a T. You know, especially their how they conduct themselves. This is Psalm 36 and 1 in the NLT, and it says, sin whispers to the wicked deep within their hearts. They have no fear of the Most High at all. In their blind conceit, they cannot see how wicked they really are. Everything they say is crooked and deceitful. They refuse to act wisely or do good. You see that? But you got to support them in any endeavor, anything that they do. You know, you can't speak out. You got to be pro. You got to be for. You got to support. All right, be a good goy. But anyway, let's continue some more.
Who taught them? Well, according to the UNRWA former legal advisor, Johan Sufi, 90% of those in Gaza attended UNRWA schools. UNRWA schools. Didn't happen in a vacuum. You're right, Mr. Guterres. Of course, the attacks did not happen in a vacuum. The perpetrators of the atrocities were graduates of your education system, Mr. Guterres, graduates of your schools. And let me just share with you a few words about our battles against terrorism and anti-Semitism at the United Nations. I mentioned UNRWA. That was recently in the news that UNRWA finally fired 70 staffers for terror links. And they said, well, we're not acknowledging anything. But let me just say a word about UNRWA and what we've been exposing for the past decade, and in particular the past couple of years. UNRWA has been funded by all of the Western countries, all of the EU countries, Canada, Australia. Were funding UNRWA with billions and billions of dollars. And after 7 decades, they haven't resettled a single Palestinian. The opposite. To quote the words of the Swiss Foreign Minister Ignacio Cassis, it is a perverse logic. We are perpetuating the conflict. UNRWA has a pathological purpose to perpetuate the Palestinians in a state of dependency, in a state of grievance, in a state of war against Israel, teaching them that their mission is to dismantle Israel through the so-called right of return. Those who invaded Israel on October 7th believed, as they were taught in UNRWA schools, they were exercising the right of return. And UNRWA says, but we teach, they tell the European taxpayers, we teach UN values. We teach human rights and UN values. Who are the teachers of UNRWA? We exposed last year in our report, Teachers of Terror, which you can find on our website, the fact that in Gaza, the head of the teachers union, Mr. Su'ail al-Hindi, who was a teacher for 30 years, school principal, and head of 8,000 UNRWA teachers funded by Western taxpayers. Su'ail al-Hindi was a member of the Hamas Politburo. He still is a member of the Hamas Politburo. You can see pictures of him with Yahya Sinwar. So the head of the teachers union, teacher and school principal, is on the Hamas Politburo that planned the October 7th attacks. Go to Lebanon. A year and a half ago, Fathi al-Sharif, head of the UNRWA Teachers Union. Same thing, 30 years, teacher, school principal at an UNRWA school in Lebanon, teaching Palestinians, funded by Western donors, was eliminated a year and a half ago in an IDF missile.
So they're going to act like they don't indoctrinate their students, their citizens, to look at everybody that's non-them, as the gum at the bottom of their shoe. They don't spit on people, Christians, they haven't been sending their students on field trips to go look at the ruins of Gaza. They don't, stand in these destinations and look over the rubble and, flex themselves. They're not doing that. Little, children or babies in a rubble. That doesn't concern them at all. There's not wrongdoing on their part. Come on, man. And we ain't gonna even talk about that Talmud, man. We ain't gonna even talk about that. This is classic gaslighting. You see, everybody's the problem but us. We don't start anything with no one. But yet, Trump keep making all these ceasefires, allegedly. He keep trying to call for peace. And what are they doing? They say, fuck your peace, man. We finna continue to strike. We're going to continue to war. Even if we drain out everybody's taxpaying money that don't agree with this, we still going to do it. And we're going to keep hitting areas where people that are actually, civilians, all right, that don't pose any threat, that don't have any weapons, this is what we're going to continue to do. But You know, you can't say nothing about it.
Was eliminated in his home in Lebanon. Justice was delivered to Fathi Sharif, and on the same day, Hamas announced, Israel killed our leader. I'm not telling you that he was the leader of Hamas. Hamas said Fathi al-Sharif, the head of the UNRWA Teachers Union in Gaza, was the head of Hamas in Lebanon. And they produced a video of him with Ismail Haniyeh and showing him walking around with Hamas bodyguards. He was the head of Hamas. And when they asked the UN Secretary General's spokesman, how could this be that the head of the teachers union of your schools was the head of Hamas? He said, you know, when there's an underground militant group that does things, it's under.
Now, let me forward it a little bit.
France, the UK, other European countries, Canada and Australia are still funding an agency that, in the words of Secretary Rubio, is an arm of Hamas. That's UNRWA. And if we want to have peace in this region, de-radicalization, it begins and ends with UNRWA. A word now about the UN Human Rights Council, which is meeting as we speak. And today, as we speak, a woman of the UN Human Rights Council, Reem Al-Salem of Jordan, who is the UN rapporteur on violence against women, also happens to be the global denier.
Hold on. All right, let me hit right here. I have to fast forward a little bit.
On Palestine. As you know, I don't have to tell this audience, she has said that America is controlled by the Jewish lobby. On October 7th, she defended Hamas, said there's a context.
Like that's like anything that's a fact that points them out, that pretty much exposes them. They just gotta, you know, when they repeat that fact back out, they do it with a level of appallment. Like, how dare you? As if it ain't a fact, like as if it isn't true. This is what they're good at this, man. Their right hand is the right hand of falsehood.
And every 5 minutes on Twitter, she is echoing the worst blood libels against Israel. She is the leading purveyor of the genocide libel. We are fighting back. We are fighting back. We have exposed her. We have exposed her hateful remarks. She is now the first UN rapporteur in history to have been condemned by France, Germany, Canada, the Netherlands, the UK, Argentina, Hungary, the US, and many other countries, Latvia, Estonia, many other countries. And each condemnation matters. And we led a campaign. We got 120,000 people, including many here, who signed our petition asking Secretary Rubio to take action when the UN failed to act. Secretary Rubio announced for the first time in history the US would sanction a UN official on July 9th. For the first time in history, UN Rapporteur Francesca Albanese was sanctioned by the United States. No more lectures that she used to give in Harvard, Princeton, Georgetown, and Columbia. In her words, the sanctions are devastating, and as she says, horribile, horribile. Very good. Very good. It sends a message of deterrence, and after she was sanctioned, we got her husband, who works for the World Bank, who shares in her incitement. He was demoted from his position at the World Bank for incitement to hate.
So basically what he's describing is, when you now speak out against what they do, they now can track you down, and then they can basically destroy your livelihood. All right, they have the power of reach to, you know, get you fired, get you demoted, you know, have your accounts frozen. They could do all that. Have your social media platform shut down. You know, so he's pretty much saying that, yeah, we got power now. We can, you know, we have the power to reach and do things to people. All right. That want to speak out. That's basically what he's admitting here. So if they're doing this to, you know, these type of figures out there, how much more the men of the Lord who's out there speaking uprightly, you know, and we know the scriptures say concerning those who renounce evil. Let's go to Isaiah 59. Verse 14 through 15, and it says, Our courts oppose the righteous, and justice is nowhere to be found. Truth stumbles in the streets, and honesty has been outlawed. You know, these motherfuckers can be a part of trafficking rings, you know, where they traffic children. You know, they can, commit statutory grape. They could do all these different things and go free. You see? Can't say nothing about it, though. It says, yes, truth is gone, and anyone who renounces evil is attacked. Yeah, you get counseled, you lose your job, you get fired, you get demoted, you know, you lose your social media account, get your bank account froze, all type of stuff. This is what they can do now, right? It says the Lord looked and was displeased to find there was no justice. So you see why the Lord's going to come back and have to do the honors, you know? And then, you know, while he's sitting up there talking and pointing, you know, many fingers everywhere, this was a post on X, and I don't know if this was a rabbi or one of them, but look at what's being, and this is what we've been talking about anyway, especially how the way things have been going with this war with Iran. You know, they don't want no peace over there. They're not trying to establish any type of peace until their agenda is accomplished. All right, so they keep on alluding to something happening. So let me play this real quick.
.com. Israeli security and defense experts say America needs another Pearl Harbor or 9/11 to remember who is the enemy and who is the friend and get behind it.
And that's Mr. Jones there, aka Bill Hicks. All right, no, be playing an excerpt in his voice being echoed. This might trigger the algorithm to, you know, they might consider, you know, removing my video. I hope they don't. You know, this is all alleged, right? And this is fair use as well. But they found this. It was a post by one of them online on X, and they're alluding to another potential terror event. But it's like, how long are you going to continue to project this type of scenario without people being suspicious if something like this does actually occur? You're the only one that's talking about this. People from your side have been always, you know, throwing that out there. And then we remember what happened with 9/11. All right? Just like they call to remembrance what happened in 1967. You know, they just thought that everybody was going to sweep that under the rug as well. So, yeah, they're calling for a new event, you know, a FF that's on a level of a 9/11 or even bigger, you know? Because I think Trump is he's playing a psychological game by trying to act like he's in opposition to his overlords right now. That's all part of the play. Because they're gonna use this, and they're not getting what they want, and this is what's going to justify, you know, once they conduct something and it actually reaches the people. The people are going to feel unsafe, you know, unsecured. And they're going to take of course, the mainstream narrative, because, you know, they're going to be running the operation on these people's minds through the media when these type of things occur. And that'll somehow redirect these people back to supporting them in that war. And we're not ignorant of Satan's devices. All right, so anybody that's, you know, calling these type of things out, This is what they want to do. And we're going to be targeted for speaking out, speaking the truth. Isaiah 29, and I'm going to start at the 20th verse. And it says, "For the terrible one is brought to naught, and the scorner is consumed, and all that watch for iniquity are cut off, that make a man an offender for a word, and lay a snare for him that reproveth in the gate, and turn aside the just for a thing of naught." And they setting that snare now where you can't speak out. You can't renounce the evil. You can't stand up against the evildoers, the workers of iniquity, you know. And you see what happened in Canada with that latest bill. And you can't even quote certain scriptures without being, you know, condemned, you know, as a you know, somebody that speaks hate speech. You know, you read Revelation 2:9 and 3:9 concerning a certain people. You know, I can see that being, you know, an offense as well. You know, it's unlawful to, you know, read the New Testament. You know, don't read the book of Revelation, because it's hateful rhetoric in there. You know. But hey, all this is happening because his world is closing in on him. His world is ending. You know, like it says in Job 20 and 27, the heaven shall reveal his iniquity, and the earth shall rise up against him. And he sees it. He knows it. You can't do all this evil for this amount of time, for this long, and then not come back towards you. So, you know, this is what's going to happen, man. And then eventually the family of the word is going to hit, you know, where you ain't going to be able to, you know, go out there and, you know, speak the truth. You know, and that's where you jakes that didn't take this seriously, you know, but you took it lightly, you know, you're going to be asked out. You know, you're going to be out there running to and fro, you know, looking for answers, and you know, you won't it won't be accessible to you. You know, that family of the word is going to hit. So I had to you know, point this out. You know, so they're going to amp up the unrighteous decrees to take away more of your rights. You know, you can't say nothing against them. You can't say nothing against, you know, the powers that be, the New World Order, this New World infrastructure. You know, you can't speak against the AI transhumanist agenda or none of these things. They're going to criminalize you. So we're right around the corner from this thing, man. Jacob's trouble, persecution. All right. So, you know, Lord willing, y'all were edified. I'm going to give all honor, all praise, and glory to Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai. And to the next lesson, I say, Shalom.